All right, I guess we're ready. You ready? Hey guys, Owen Reigler here. You know, if your goal is to acquire a bunch of land, I want to show you some things that I've done to make that happen here in Iowa. If it has the crop history of CRP, I love that. That's going to be big to the buyer as well. When you go to sell this, deck the farm out with all the blinds and the tree stands where you would have them. Now when you get ready to sell this farm, marketing is going to be key. So any really good trail pictures you have, you want to save all those. Over the last 23 or so years that I've lived in Iowa, there's a few things that I've looked for in these farms where you see you can add value, and you know, eventually you're going to sell the farm and 1031 into something more, which is what I've wanted to do. I've always wanted more ground, more farms, maybe more contiguous acres or farms in different areas. But I want to show you some of the things that I looked for all these years that have been, you know, my best farms, my best money makers. So I want to start out with a clean slate. I think is the most important. If you're looking at a farm where everything's already been done to it, all the food plots have been done, the TSI, you know, you're probably going to have to pay a premium for that farm. So I want to look for a farm where none of that's been done, and so you can buy it at market value for what it is, and then you can go do all this work to it, you know, and then eventually sell that and then roll it into a 1031 where you buy more ground. And you know, that's what I've done. I've probably bought and sold 20, maybe low 20s farms. And so I'll show you a farm I've got right here. This is a great example. It looks like it's probably a pasture farm. Nothing's been done to it. I don't see any food plots on it, you know, fair amount of timber. And then we can go, let's look at the topo and see if some of this could at least be tillable, because that's one of the things I've always had to look at is, even though this farm doesn't have income on it, what can I do to generate that income? I've always had to look at them from that standpoint. You know, I could never just had the money where I could just be like, well, it don't matter that the income is, eventually I'll make it a good farm. But I've always had to look at that. So, you know, one of the things you're going to look at is where could I even put tillable to help pay for this farm? So let's look at contour lines here. All right, now you can kind of look some of this open ground, so you know you're not going to have a big expense of having to clear the land. That's another thing to look at. If it's timber, even though it might be in bottom ground, it's going to be expensive to clear it, so I usually will eliminate that right from the start. But if you look at some of this stuff, you got a ridge here, you could definitely make that tillable. You know, come around this ditch here and you got another ridge, and so you start mapping this out, all your ridges and stuff. You can look at where you would put tillable at, you know, outside of just your food plot stuff. Okay, so now I can help make an income, help make a farm payment. That's going to be big to the buyer as well. When you go to sell this, now it's got some income and they can do the same thing, because you know, your buyers that can just walk in and buy a farm with not having to worry about income is going to be a pretty low number. So definitely one of the things I look at, and so this would all be tillable for me. And I probably have to look at that first, because you know, you got a family, you've got a regular job. It's like I've got to look at income first. I got to be able to make sure I can make this farm payment. And so all this is going to be tillable. And now I know my income before I even start the hunting process of it, what I would do to increase the value of the farm through food plots and forest stand improvement. Maybe you put some water on the farm, you know, whatever. And some of the ways we can generate income, you know, you've got tillables, one thing. Another thing you want to look at when you look at the farm, are there trees for logging? I mean, are there giant walnuts in there? You know, maybe big oak trees, although I don't harvest many oaks, you know, just from the wildlife standpoint. But so let's look at the timber value in there. So maybe you can generate money there, you know, for your own personal payments and whatnot, but also you could market that to the next guy if you just keep that on there. And when you go to sell it, you can also market that as well, that there's income as soon as you buy the farm. You know, another one, if it has the crop history of CRP, I love that, because now you can add cover and you don't need all food. Because I've had farms before where maybe they're 80% open ground, and so I want to add cover to it. So now you can put it on CRP. Maybe it pays as good as crop ground, maybe it doesn't, but you know, with the benefit to the wildlife, I'm always going to choose that if I can. You know, in addition, on your timber ground, there's a lot of different programs the government puts out for REAP and EQIP. And I mean, they'll set up, your forester will set up exactly what you have to do to get that money, but it's just one more thing you can do to generate income. And it's improving the farm the whole time too. So not only are you generating income, but you're increasing the value of the farm, you know, when you go to turn around and sell it. So another thing you can do on these farms, especially if the same landowner owns more ground in the area than what you're buying, is sometimes you can negotiate an easement or something where you've got better access than what the farm provides. They'll give you maybe a trail you can access just by foot. I've done that before on farms where you get basically a hunting access from a different direction, so that can be real big. If you don't have good access around the farm, I think it's important to make your road system around the perimeter of the farm so you can access all parts of the farm without having to go through the middle of it. And I've done that on about everything. Where we're sitting here on the home farm, this has got roads all the way around it. Either gravel roads go around it, or I've actually built roads around it, and sometimes that's taking out trees and stuff, but that adds a lot of value and also makes the farm way more huntable. So I think that's imperative to do that, and then that value is going to translate when you go to sell it. Now, if I was going to put trails on this farm, I would start right here. Looks like this road dead ends, and then I would go right down this perimeter so you can access any of the north part of your farm down this trail. So for one, you're going to be quiet and great from a hunting standpoint. And if you need to get equipment down to any part of this farm, you want to make it a wide enough trail where you can get skid loader, maybe a truck or whatever down through there. So I would definitely put one there. And it looks like we don't have a road here either, maybe one down here, but I would make another trail right here. So you're doing this for different wind directions. I want to access my farm on a south wind, or I want to access it on a north wind, so that's why I want to have these on the borders. Another thing I've done a lot of are creek crossings, where you buy a culvert, come in, just do the dirt work. Again, for access, if your farm's more accessible for equipment, it's worth more money. And so that's just one more thing you guys can do to up the value. Not real hard to do. You can rent a skid loader, and depends on how big the creek is as far as what you want to do. I like culverts because if you got a tractor and a planter, you're not going through a low water crossing, which sometimes can be a pain. But if it's something you don't plan on ever getting equipment back to, then you could just cut the banks back and just make a quad crossing, or maybe a pickup truck. There's a lot of different things you can do for access that'll add value to your property. Food plots is always going to be big to any deer hunter. You want to have food there, so not only do you have your tillable mapped out here for extra income, but now, okay, either you can leave some of that standing in strategic spots, or you can look at little nooks and crannies like this right here. These are places that I would put in food plots, and you can decide you want those to be green sources, turnips, beans, whatever it may be, but that's definitely going to add value. And another one is water. Anytime you can put water on the farm in strategic spots, whether it's a little pond, keep an EHD in mind. You don't want the mud flats, you don't want to create those. So smaller water holes that get deep quick are a better option now that EHD is so prevalent in the area. And another thing you can do is just deck the farm out with all the blinds and the tree stands where you would have them. I sold a farm not too long ago, and a big selling feature to him was it was all ready to go. Tree stands were already up, we already had some blinds up, so once he bought the farm, he was already hunting. He can put his own spin on it if he wants, but it's already ready to go, and I think that's a big deal as well. Now, when you get ready to sell this farm, marketing is going to be key. So any really good trail pictures you have, you want to save all those. And I save them all by farm, by month, and by year, so I can go back to any year. Another thing, if you killed some nice deer on it, or if you've got some nice video, you want to use all of that, because that's going to add value to the property. The guy buying it now, he knows this farm can already produce. It's not one of those where you buy a farm and you're hoping there's good deer on it. There's proof that it's already there. So guys, these are some of the tactics I've used over the last 23 or so years to buy and sell roughly 25 farms. Hopefully this helps you guys.